Good afternoon. I am Boston City Councilor Andrea Campbell. I am the District 4 Councilor. I represent the neighborhoods of Mattapan, Dorchester, a little bit of Jamaica Plain, and Rosendale. This committee, which is the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, is actually chaired by Councilor Ayanna Presley, who had a long-standing conflict, so couldn't be here this evening, as well as my two other women colleagues, Council President Michelle Wu and Councilor at Large Anissa Sabi-George. They send their regrets. But that being said, when we started this, we knew that we would have conflicts and schedules and family stuff have come up. But we set out to come together around a particular topic in a particular topic area, and that is the big topic of early ed and care. And within that umbrella, we are exploring various topics, and so I'll circle back as to what tonight or this afternoon and tonight's presentation hopefully we'll go into. But some logistics for the record, this is being recorded, and it will be broadcast on Comcast Channel 8 and RCN Channel 82. And apparently we've added Verizon, and it will also be online, which is fantastic. Usually we say silence your cell phones, but obviously we're at the Codman Square Library in Dorchester, and this is a big space, so put them on vibrate, and if you need to, call someone, I just ask that you step outside the room. I also, before we jump in, want to thank my team and my staff members for their help. I recently had a baby, and the baby is being floated around, and we know this, it's a joint effort to do this work. So thank you to my team. Thank you also to Central staff for bringing this into the community and setting it up. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to be able to actually have a hearing outside of City Hall and inside the community. So thank you to Central staff, and thank you to the host, our host, the Codman Square Library. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank my panelists. And for the record, rather than me try to attempt to introduce everyone, if we could just start maybe with you, Carmel, saying your name, your the state organization you're with, and just a general summary of what you do, and then move down the line, and then we'll circle back, and I'll sort of get the conversation started with Kelly.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Carmel Sullivan. I am the Deputy Commissioner for Field Operations, and I oversee the 5 regional offices for the Department of Early Education and Care. So that means that I oversee all of the licensing for family childcare, group and school-age childcare, as well as our residential and placement and adoption licensing matters. We have 5 regional offices. They are located in Springfield, Lawrence, Taunton, Worcester, and Quincy. And the individuals that are with me today are from our Metro Boston office, and they are located in our Quincy office.
Hi, my name's Loretta Prendeville, and I work at the Department of Early Education and Care, and my role there is a Coordinated Family Community Engagement Specialist, and I work with Coordinated Family Engagement grantees as well as transitional support for the Inclusive Preschool Learning Grant and another grant building transition through early intervention into the public school. Primarily the role of my role is to build family engagement and thread that through many different grants, but throughout a lot of the work of the Department of Early Education and Care. I am housed in Quincy, but I also support the Southeast Regional Office in Taunton as well.
Hello, I'm Joy Cohen, and I am the Program Quality Specialist, which means I support programs in early education and care, out-of-school time programs, and public school programs with QRIS, which is the Quality Rating and Improvement System. I support programs with engaging and advancing through the QRIS, so improving their quality on a continuous basis up 1 through 4, levels 1 through 4.
Hello, I'm Linda Womack, Program Supervisor for Center-Based Programs in the Metro Boston region. My job is to ensure that anyone that wants to provide care for ones that are not related to them from 0 to 14, 16 with special needs are licensed. We also manage any kind of allegation that is
And
against
you
a
can pull
program.
those closer, by the way.
Against a
you.
program to ensure that anyone that is providing or trying to provide care follows the regulations, state law.
And I am Kelly Meehan. I'm the Regional Director for the Metro Boston office, so I oversee the Metro Boston region. We have a team of 6 licensors for family childcare, 6 licensors for group and school age. We have 2 residential and placement licensors, and we also have a host of other support staff who assist with all different aspects of supporting families and program quality.
Thank you, and thank you guys for being here, or ladies for being here. I really appreciate it. As I was explaining to the panelists when we started, that this is meant to be a robust conversation. I will set some parameters, but we have some experts in the room, and we want you to share as much as you can. These recordings will be reviewed not only by the 4 women counselors, but also our male colleagues who care deeply about this issue as well, with the hopes of generating some recommendations, not only for the city of Boston to do in the space of early ed and care, but how the city may partner with the state, not just on funding, but how do we increase access, how do we increase quality, how do we increase affordability for families in the city of Boston. We've covered a whole host of issues, but tonight we're really looking to test, I think, a couple of assumptions, which is, one, there is this idea, and this was based on conversations that I've had with families in my district or residents at other hearings and briefings related to this topic, which is that families who live in areas that are deemed to sort of be low socioeconomic status communities, high concentrations of poverty, don't have as much access to, or sort of a high number of places to provide daycare or early ed and care for their kids in their communities. And not only do they not have access to these facilities, they tend to not necessarily be the best quality. And this is an assumption that we're sort of testing tonight, and that those folks who maybe live in other parts of the city, maybe the Seaport District, the Financial District, South End, West Roxbury, parts of Jamaica Plain, have access to not only higher quality care, but to more facilities. So for example, a family that lives in Mattapan who's recently had a child, may be looking for a provider. They look in their neighborhood and they find it difficult to find a place. And if they do find a place, there's maybe a waiting list, so they can't get in. It's not necessarily affordable. So I'd love for us to talk about where are places for, located. The goal maybe at the end of this will be for us to try to map this out. But where are facilities located in terms of numbers, in terms of type of facilities, affordability. Can we talk a little bit about subsidies, and if they exist, for who and for whom, to really talk about that access piece, to talk about the affordability piece, and then lastly, quality. You know, how do we measure the quality of facilities? Does the state do it? What metrics do they use? Do other folks do it? Independent third-party contractors? And how could the city play a role in all these 3 areas? I know that might sound like a lot. I hope it doesn't. And so, Kelly, if you want to start, and we could sort of turn this into a conversation. And lastly, folks who are in the audience, we will have public testimony, so feel free to sign in at the front and check the box if you'd like to testify. We have a couple of folks from BPS here as well, so if you guys want to chime in at some point, more than happy to allow you to do that as well. So thank you. And if you have questions for me about anything I've said thus far, feel free to ask. Thank you,
Okay.
Kelly.
So thank you for being here, and thanks for inviting us. We really appreciate the opportunity to share the good work that we see going on in the community, and tell you a little bit about the ways that we work to support families and children and program quality in the city of Boston. We have approximately 700 programs in the city of Boston. The city of Boston covers, as you know, a wide range of neighborhoods or communities. It's not one entity. Alston, Beacon Hill, Brighton, Charlestown, Chinatown, Dorchester, which is multiple communities in of itself, East Boston, Fenway, Hyde Park, Jamaica Plain, Mattapan, Mission Hill, North End, Roslindale, Roxbury, South Boston, West End, and West Roxbury. And the programs that we cover are both what we call center-based programs, which are group care programs, and family child care programs. And there are family child care programs that serve 4 children, and they can serve as many as 10 children in a family child care setting. So those are home-based programs. And we have licensors who are supporting all of these educators in these communities. All of our educators are required to attend a preliminary orientation training. Before they even think about becoming a new educator, they're invited to attend what we call a potential provider meeting, which is hosted in our office monthly and is offered for family child care in multiple languages. We offer them in Spanish, in Mandarin and Cantonese, and occasionally in Portuguese. So we try to be very inclusive and mindful of the population that we're serving, and try to give people an opportunity to engage in early child care who come from a wide range of backgrounds. And we also offer orientation meetings, and we collaborate with Childcare Choices of Boston to do this. Licensors attend these. This is for family child care, not for group and school age. And that's a 5-hour training, and licensors do half of that really focus on helping them learn much more about regulatory compliance and quality and all of the resources that we offer as well. And for group and school age, we offer a renewal meeting. So they're required to renew their license every 2 years. Licensors are also doing that, and it brings them up to speed on changes in the regulation or trends that we've seen maybe in regulatory noncompliance issues or health and safety issues. So it gives us an opportunity just to be face-to-face with educators in the communities. And we offer a wide range of other program supports, and so Loretta will talk a little bit about the coordinated family and community engagement. So we try to also access and reach parents who are not yet accessing early childhood and care programs, because there are parents out there who are home and need to be connected to resources and need to learn about options available to help advance their children's growth and development. And Joy also is another partner who helps us with program quality. So all of the programs who accept subsidies are required to engage in what we call a QRIS program. Joy can talk a little bit more about that. So Linda can talk a little bit more about the licensing process.
That's great.
And in terms of numbers, so I want to
Yep.
address kind of what you asked. And I think that in some communities that tend to have less corporate presence, I think that there tend to be more, my experience and my observation is that there tend to be more community-based nonprofit centers, like the Boys and Girls Club, like the Y, like the Yawkey Center, Catholic Charities. So we have a lot of large programs and a lot of community-based educators, ABCD, Nurtury. There are a lot of really strong, high-quality providers that are serving families in a lot of communities. The more for-profit or commercial, and maybe you would agree, tend to be more located in kind of business communities where there's a high concentration of businesses. So those are the Bright Horizons and some of the other kind of larger for-profit educators. So, and sometimes they look flashy and great, but that doesn't always translate to quality just because they look great. We have some very strong, very high quality, community-focused early care and education programs right embedded in communities, some that have been operating for a very long time. And in communities where there are less center-based programs, there tend to be a higher concentration of family-based programs. And family-based programs are interesting because they provide an opportunity for educators to create a small business. A lot of educators that we see are, either sole or primary providers for their family. They can start by serving 6 children. If they have a good track record and they are operating for at least 3 years, they can expand to include 10 children. And 10 children requires that they hire an assistant. So we also, I should have said that we also certify assistants for family child care and what we call certified assistants. And all of them have different levels of requirement in terms of training and experience. So that's another source of employment in a lot of communities. Sometimes people prefer a smaller, more family-oriented setting. People feel more comfortable with that. But there are a lot of those educators in these communities.
Just a quick, a couple of follow-up questions. Of the 700 programs in the city of Boston, are there any neighborhoods without any sort of a provider for early ed and care? I'm assuming it's no, but
I don't think so.
Okay.
No,
so those 700 are.
I can't think of a single community that's not served in some way. And one of the things that we offer for families is an opportunity, once they identify, our EEC website has a locator. So you can say, I live at, Washington and Washington
Right.
Street at 290 Washington Street. Tell me all of the educators that are within a mile of my home. And it will give you a list of all of the educators. And then what parents can do is also, once they identify a short list of 3 or 4, possibly 5 programs or center-based or family programs, they can call the office and ask for a licensing history. So that's a way that we can really share information with parents. Licensors are happy to do that.
Just to follow up on your question
good.
as well,
Yeah.
I wanted to let you know that with the materials that we have provided to the city councilors, we have created a list of all of the licensed programs in the city of Boston, so that
Is that in
every
here?
single, yes, every single city councilor will have a list of the entire licensed programs that we have available, and so that they can go through.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then the second question had to do with the concentration of the sort of corporate presence in certain areas and how that might attract certain types of providers. And then those communities that have less of a corporate presence might attract some of the community-based nonprofits or the home-based programming. What's interesting is there might be some sort of stigma attached. You were saying just because it's sort of flashy or in a particular area doesn't mean it necessarily is a higher quality than the mother or the parent or the father or the mother and father who run a program out of their home or someone else. Are there any efforts by the department to address that in some way, that sort of stigma that might be attached to the flashy organizations?
Well, I think that engagement in our quality rating improvement system is really an excellent way to kind of level the playing field, right? So,
And we can wait to.
yeah.
Okay.
So Joy can talk a little bit more about, what she's seeing in terms of programs and how parents can use that as a way to assess the level of quality. So, but we have some very high quality programs in church
Right.
basements.
Right.
That have staff who are very committed and doing really excellent, extraordinary family engagement and child education.
And then one more question. Of the list of providers, if you were to map them out, and I think we're either are doing that, or they tend to be concentrated in different areas, I'm assuming? Or is there some conclusions we can draw from if you were to map these places out? What conclusions might we be able to draw from what we see? So for example, when we were looking at where some of the places might be, and this was actually before we got the data from EEC, we were just gathering data through other resources. There was sort of tended to be a high concentration of providers right here in Dorchester or in even pockets of Mattapan where you would not have assumed that so many providers existed. many of them were home-based, but they still existed. Just curious if the more corporate providers are concentrated in certain areas of the city of Boston, home-based providers might be concentrated in certain areas, the centers might be concentrated in certain areas of the city of Boston. I don't know.
That assumption, conclusion, I don't think there's anything tied, it's just the way it maps out.
I think centers also tend to be more centrally located to transit. You'll see Head Start programs that are not buried in the neighborhood, but are more located in convenient, accessible places. Certainly on Columbia Road and certainly on Blue Hill Ave, there are a number of programs that are kind of right on Blue Hill Ave.
Right. And you might see more home-based providers still near
More in the
transit, but
neighborhoods, right.
possibly more in neighborhoods where there's less access to transit. Interesting.
Yeah, I would follow
Yeah.
up on that as
Yeah.
to say that I think that one of the ways of looking at the situation is, I don't think it's a matter of, we have capacity is the way to think of it. There's definitely capacity. The question is, what are parents looking for? And then it becomes, and we would look to Joy to talk about this, is what are parents looking for in aspects of quality? What are they looking for in a program? Because people are looking for particular things. Some
Right.
parents really are looking for a center-based program. They want to be in a larger program setting. Some have that thought process, and that might be to your thoughts and sort of what you were speaking to, Andrea, as to what is the department doing with respect to changing that sort of, I don't want to be in a family child care program. I don't want to be in somebody's home. I want to be in sort of the Kindercares or the Bright Horizons, as opposed into someone's home, even though those family child care homes offer excellent care, offer very, very focused, kind attention, which is very good quality care. So I think that's sort of a perception that we're trying to overcome in so many ways, just depending upon brand new parents who come in and say, okay, this is what I assume should be a childcare setting for my brand new baby, or my 4-month-old, or my, I'm ready to send my child off to care, and this is what I expect. So I think it's just a matter of educating parents and what they expect out of a child care setting, and sort of what their needs are, and helping them to explore, what do I feel comfortable with? And we have that on our website, and we actually have licensors who sort of can go through that with parents when they're looking at different programs to understand, oh, I didn't realize that I had these different kinds of options available to me.
That's very helpful in terms of capacity, but also I was writing down there is choice.
Yes.
There's choice in the types of providers, and the question becomes, out of this choice that is available to our families in different neighborhoods, what is most suitable for that particular family? So it's not necessarily a question about lack of access. It might be affordability, what's within the program, quality metrics, getting the word out, making sure that families know about the EEC locator, those kind of things.
Now, it would be remiss to say that there is a lack of access to infant care. That has always been an issue for us as to ensuring that there is enough infant care out there.
And why is that?
I'll actually let Linda and Kelly speak to that, because I think they can be far more articulate than myself.
Especially when you think about there's 700 providers,
Exactly.
right?
I mean, it's, what I see is qualifications for teachers, for infant teachers, and a lot
Kelly,
of
can you move the
and the responsibility for infant care takes a little bit more effort to deal with the highest risk of children in care. So, I would say that qualifications, you really would have to.
So there's sort of a pipeline issue of people sort of applying to provide for infants, and then whether or not they have the qualifications to sort of apply in the first place. But are we finding that people are applying but maybe being turned away because they don't have the qualifications, and that the training that the state provides still won't meet a gap?
Yes. And I'm sure that's not the only reason, but that's what I see. I see that the qualifications of staff are lacking that, and so they're not in the classrooms.
Are there any numbers related to that access piece when it comes to infant care, in terms of we have these many families applying with infants who need infant care, but we're only able to meet the need for these many families? The rest are either on waiting list or frankly go on and have to look elsewhere.
Again, in your packet, we
Yep.
have the wait list numbers, and so you can see the breakdown. And I apologize that I don't have it right in front of me, but the infant care number that for the wait list right now is, I believe it's over 900 that are waiting in the city of Boston. And if you look at preschoolers, it is only, and I don't mean only because it's a shame that we have any kind of wait list at any given time, but it is approximately 200. So you can just see the difference right there.
That's very helpful. And it reminds me, when we talk about the access piece, sort of lack of access for infants, but one of the other briefings that Councilor Presley focused on were those families that have, that work different types of shifts, different types of jobs, and who look for care that start really early in the morning or late at night. And there is an access issue there. But for the bulk and majority of our families, would you say that the bulk or majority of our families tend to be looking for care for a certain age group? Or, so for example, if there's lack of access for families with infants, is that the majority of the families that are looking for care, or do you break it down by their child's age? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
No, it does. I mean, the way we categorize all of our school groupings is we have infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and school age. And so all of our children fall into those categories based upon sort of how we view our classrooms, for lack of a better expression, or how we view sort of our ratios and our educators and in a classroom. So that's, we have seen, because of the great work that Boston Public Schools has done with the K1, K2, and the preschool enrollment, that there has been a great increase in preschool enrollment. So, if you will, the 4-year-olds who are out there in the city of Boston have received preschool services and are enrolled and are moving through the system and have entered the Boston Public Schools, which is wonderful. The Department of Early Education and Care is part of that as well, with respect to our preschool enrichment grant, which provides a 1 year for 4-year-olds. It's a free program. It's a federal grant that we have received. We're into our 3rd year with that, which we have partnered with Boston Public Schools to develop the preschool grant, in particular programs throughout different parts of the city to offer this program. And there's about 400 4-year-olds who are enrolled in this particular program. So that need is being met. Is it completely met? No, but it is being met. So the other groupings are still, the infants and the toddlers in particular, there is still a need to have those groups.
Those who are less than 4.
Exactly.
That's helpful to know, because when we're talking about putting together recommendations, where should the focus really be? Where should we, understanding there's a need across the board, of course, for those 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds that don't get into a BPS program and then can't find a provider, then where are those families left to go? But obviously, less than 4, they have less options You know, they don't have BPS and providers to look to. It's really your system, right? So that's really helpful in terms of thinking about where can we begin to help hyper-focus any resources we have, or begin, where do we start? So that's very helpful. I know I took this way. We're going to go back this way. So I don't know if you want to go into quality, or Kelly, if you have anything more to add, or Loretta, if you have anything more to add.
Sure, I mean, we can talk about quality. Do you want to talk about
okay.
quality,
Sure,
George?
I always want to talk about quality. Maybe get 2 microphones. Okay. So I would like to start by talking a little bit about what is a QRS.
Yes.
So many states, in fact, most states have a QRS, a quality rating and improvement system. In Massachusetts, I'm sorry, let me take a step back. The purpose of a QRS is threefold. It's to assess quality, to improve quality, and also to communicate quality. And I like to tell people it's almost like a Yelp for early education care and out-of-school time programs, is one of the objectives of a QRS. In Massachusetts, our QRS has 5 kind of domains of quality. They are curriculum and learning, safe and healthy indoor and outdoor environments, workforce qualifications and professional development, family and community engagement, and program administration and leadership. Within those 5 domains or standards of quality, we have identified high quality indicators that programs either demonstrate through the use of self-assessment or external assessment, which I'll talk about, or through submitting paperwork that kind of evidences best practice in policy and practice. We have 4 levels to our QRAS, and it's a block system, which means you move through 1 level at a time, and ideally you achieve all of the requirements at that level before moving on to the next. Once you've engaged in QRAS and you're at level 2 is essentially a self-assessment. So you are self-assessing even with the assessment tools that we use at the higher levels. The tools that we use in the QRAS, we have several QRS measurement tools, but the main tools that we are looking at, some of the main tools that we're looking at to assess quality are the environment rating scales, which are evidence-based, research-based tools for measuring quality in all program types. So there's a specific tool for looking at settings with infants and toddlers, the infant-toddler environment rating scale. There's one for preschool programs that's called the early childhood environment rating school. There's a scale. There's one for family child care centers, and there's one for after-school, out-of-school time programs. So at level 2, programs are asked to self-assess and complete what's called a continuous quality improvement plan, which is at the heart of our QRAS. It's about identifying what are the strengths, what are we doing really well, where are some areas for growth, and what are we going to do about it. And the idea behind the QRS is that it's a living document, and it kind of keeps evolving as you are improving your quality and identifying new strengths, new areas for improvement, and new action steps. At level 3, in the current QRS system, you self-assess, and then once your paperwork is complete, myself or in this region or my colleagues, we go in and we do what's called a technical assistance observation, which really is an opportunity to learn more about your tools, your program in the context of these tools. So you have a little bit of support, and we get to share and kind of inform the CQIP together, CQIP Continuous Quality Improvement Plan. At level 4 is when we introduce what's called a reliable rater visit. We contract at this time with Wellesley College Center for Women, and we work with a reliable rater team who will come in at level 4 and do the observation at that level. One thing that's really important, a couple of things that's really important to understand, one of which is there's never a time where a program hits a roadblock with quality improvement. If at the time of an observation or at any time during an application, a program has not met those requirements, we work with them to make whatever changes and whatever improvements. And EEC has really a wealth of resources that that contribute to that support, one of which is the Educator Provider Support grantee. In here for District 4 and for Region 6, that's the ABCD. So through that grant, there is support with everything from QRAS technical assistance to subsidized college coursework to professional development, including continuous education units, CEUs. There's academic advising, there's support with accreditation, all of those supports that kind of scaffold this quality improvement initiative. So it really is a holistic approach to quality. And one piece kind of to tie in with what Carmel was saying and what you were asking, Andrea, is this, that one of the main levers of a QRS is it really highlights program strengths. What makes you a uniquely quality program? And there's no, one box that all programs are going to fit in. And that doesn't mean that one program is necessarily less quality. It means that that quality is being demonstrated in a different way. And it's really, it's great to see that across the program types and in the different regions, that there's still a standard of quality that can be met in these kind of unique ways.
I was just about to ask that. So while it's important to highlight the strengths of each program and what makes it unique, almost like our BPS schools, or some schools that have fantastic dance programs or art or technology or robotics program or something else, but there's still an expectation that all the programs at a minimum will meet certain standards. And I guess pulling that apart a little bit, what sort of those standards or those 5 areas that you described earlier, or sort of just a few minutes ago? Or what are those standards at a minimum that you expect?
So at minimum, at all levels, the program is required to have a license in good standing. So we want to see that the program's licensed and following, the regulations. And because it's a block system, and because a piece of the QRS is to support program improvement, you're really looking at a system that's kind of showing within these 5 standards, what does this look like at this quality level? So some examples would be, how do you, if you are a family child care provider, how do you outreach and network with other family child care providers so that you can share resources and understand how to better serve the children and families in your program? Then at the at level 3, that might look something like, how are you sharing those resources with families and then following up on access to? So it's kind of tiered in a way, building on top of it and growing.
And the expectation is that they grow over time and continue to have more strength.
And that the expectation ideally is that it never stops. So even after you've achieved a level 4, you are practicing this reflective practice and this ongoing, this continuous quality improvement, exclusive of a QRS, exclusive of the environment rating scales. You are now adopting this culture of ongoing quality improvement. And that in and of itself is what quality is, this culture of ongoing improvement.
Of the 700, are they broken down by where they are, sort of level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4?
Yes.
And is there, of the 700, are sort of half in one area or half above a level 2, or do certain types of facilities tend to be more level 3 or 4, more home-based, more level 3s?
We're a little bottom heavy, only in the sense of there are certainly less level 4s than there are level 2s. But I don't think that is necessarily a reflection of quality and the state of quality across the state at all. I think it is still in progress. It takes a long time to move through quality. Quality isn't something that happens just like that. You can be working through from one level to another. It can take it could take quite a bit of time.
Is there an
because
average for that time?
There really isn't, and
Okay.
it depends on a couple of different factors. Because there's also the document review piece, there's a little bit of back and forth with that. And then because, the environment rating scales are primarily looking at the environment and interaction. So how are the children interacting with materials? How are the children and the staff interacting? How are the staff interacting with families? Some of these quality indicators are faster technical assistance issues. So if it's a matter of, did you set up your environment, this is just an example, did you set up your environment, is your environment set up to minimize conflict? That could potentially be a fix, like you're moving materials from one classroom to another, for example. Whereas if you're seeing that a program really could use some support with some interactions, it's a little bit more a deeper investment in some professional development, maybe some coaching and mentoring in the program over time. So in some cases, there really is a longevity component, and I think that in some instances, there may be some programs that get discouraged and may not move forward as quickly. They may take a break for whatever reason, but I don't believe that it is in any way, shape, or form an indicator of the quality of the programs.
If families wanted to look at, say, the 700 providers and see what level they are and more information, can they find out detailed information about each provider online?
So at this time,
Yep.
our QRS ratings are not, we don't make them public at this time.
Okay.
Eventually, at some point, that will be part of our QRS. Right now, programs
Okay.
are encouraged to share their ratings on their own,
Okay.
but we do not share them at this time.
Is that going to change anytime soon?
We are hoping, so we're undergoing some QRS revisions. We're revising our
Okay.
system. We're in the process of streamlining and revising our system. One of the additions or modifications we're hoping will be some mechanism to be communicating it. So we're doing the assessment and we're doing the improving, and now the third piece of us being able to support programs and families with that communication piece. We kind of see it on the horizon. What that will look like, I don't know
No one knows
yet.
yet. But if a family goes into one of the providers and asks specifically, what is your rating and all of that, I'm assuming they're entitled to get that information before they decide to enroll their child from the,
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Do we know of any examples where someone would refuse to give that? I
I've-
imagine then, of course, I'd then walk out the door, but,
Yeah, no, I actually have heard quite to the contrary, that programs really are proud and they're celebrating, and I
So
know
it's
that.
out there, it's just
Yes,
coming
I
from-
know that
from
my
that
team
estimate.
and I, we really look forward to the opportunity to nurture that celebration. I want to add one thing that I think it's important
Take your
to
time.
say, access-wise, in regard to our QRIS, is that we now in our unit have a bilingual program quality specialist who is available to support Spanish-speaking educators and programs so that they can be supported in their primary language. And it's made a really significant impact in the engagement from that population. And so I want to just acknowledge that.
Is that a new role?
That she's been able to cover outside of her region, or that her caseload has allowed
Okay.
her to cover outside of her region.
And would the goal be to try to expand to other languages similar to what we were talking about earlier?
Yes.
And I imagine that takes resources and resources.
It is, and that I will tell you is absolutely at the forefront in our minds as a unit. That just as we want quality to be accessible to children and families, we really want quality to be accessible to all educators and programs. And so that is absolutely a priority, is to address
Do the
that.
language. Going back quickly to, so if a provider decides to take a break, and I imagine that means not to do the next steps to improve, to move from a level 2 to a level 3 or from a level 3 to level 4, does that person eventually go offline? Like, how long can you stay at a level 2 or level 3 without the department saying, okay, when are we going to move you along?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So at this time, we we really don't have a way to revisit that. Our IT system will eventually be updated, and we will have a mechanism to have almost, we're thinking a renewal or a re-verification process somewhere in there. The recommendation from the validation study was that the higher levels would be, the recommendation was that the renewal would be every 3 years. At this time, we don't have a way to do that. I don't know that we have an average, but I have seen a trend. Programs that are really, the wheel is kind of spinning, they'll look, because they're already self-assessing and they're already in that process, so they will look at what are the requirements for that next level, and let's start planning right now. Now we have our level 2 rating. Let's talk about what will we need to do, what will we look like at level 3, and what do we need to do. And then however long that process takes, there really isn't a pattern.
And are there, so if we were to look at the providers that are more corporate-based versus, say, the home providers, and if you were to break down their levels, do you see that, for example, the home providers tend to be more in the level 2 area versus the more corporate providers tend to be in a level 3 or 4? And then my follow-up to that is, and I don't know the answer to that, is what does it take in terms of resources, training for a provider, regardless of their type, to be able to really move from a level 2 to a level 3 or level 3 to level 4? Because we were talking earlier about the home care providers and how these really are small businesses, and that came up in a previous briefing we had about the lack of training. And I think this might have been Council Presley again, talking about the need for training, but to treat these providers, particularly the home care providers, as small businesses. And that they need to be looped in and, when the city is doing outreach around small businesses, not just capital investment, training, how do you brand yourself, all of that, to also include these providers. But I'm just curious if it takes, what does it take in terms of resources, human capital, or whatever else, to be able to move through those levels?
So if we're just talking about the workforce qualifications piece, there's it varies really by level and even by program type. One of the pieces of data gleaned from the validation study was that there are potential barriers with our current, the way that we've set up the professional development requirements. At this time, we allow programs to take up to 4 exemptions at a time per application. And we're seeing that a lot of those exemption requests are coming in for the professional development. So that will be something that will be addressed in the new QRS. In terms of resources, there's no one thing that would keep somebody from advancement to a level. There's no one area or any one thing that's missing or there that would keep you, other than a significant licensing noncompliance, of course. But funding should not be a barrier to a QRS advancement. So my hope would be that if there were a perceived financial barrier, that a program would reach out to EPS. EPS courses are available, whatever it is.
I imagine if one facility, whether it's home care or corporate or family center, has someone that can focus on doing that, responding with the paperwork, has sort of an extra set of hands, that it might be easier for them, at least for some pieces, to respond quicker or more thoroughly to what might be required to move through levels.
Right. I actually haven't found that. I haven't found that is necessarily true. I've worked with a family childcare provider who was able to achieve level 3 after, I'm going to say, 7 months. That included 3 visits, and she did it all on her own. She's the sole teacher in the program.
Okay.
And then I have programs that have the designated QRS kind of person that you're talking about. that really struggle. So I don't know that there is necessarily any rhyme or reason, which is interesting, but.
And do you do any, sort of gather any feedback or surveys from the providers who either are staying at a certain level or who tried to get from a level 2 to a level 3, but it didn't happen, sort of what their frustrations were or why it didn't happen for them? Just curious if there's any feedback
Yes.
mechanisms from folks.
Excellent question, yes. So I can tell you that the top 3 barriers to both engagement and advancement are pretty consistently the professional development requirements, turnover rate. Turnover rate is maybe even number 1 that we're hearing. And I would say that the third would be that perceived idea that we need more money to advance, that we need to purchase, different this or we need that. And that has been a barrier at times, just a little bit of misinformation about that.
No, that's very helpful. Do you want to chime in, Kelly?
Yeah, and I want to give Linda a chance to say more about other ways that we support quality.
Yeah.
Because there are a number of capital investment and grant programs that support quality improvement efforts. But I'd like Linda to talk a little bit
Oh,
about
sure,
our
yeah.
monitoring process and technical support that licensing staff provide too.
This is very helpful.
Well,
and
the exciting part
you,
of
Joy, as well.
licensing right now is we were charged, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We were charged with a different way of approaching licensing in 2014. It was a federal mandate. And we've been working diligently to try to change the way we do licensing by the federal mandate is to go into programs annually. We want to make sure that when we're going into programs, it's not time-consuming for providers unnecessarily, but you're going in, you're seeing the problem, and you're also providing technical assistance. You're also, we have new technology, so the licensors are going out to the programs and they are using a laptop to insert information so that once they're completed conduct their licensing study, they're able to give that information straight to the provider, and it cuts down on the time of licensing. Now we're in phase 2. So on both sides, the providers are working hard to learn the new system as well as the licensors. I think it's a great opportunity to connect better with the providers because they're working hand in hand to make sure that it works. I would say that licensors, I have to say, Metro Boston, they have a great team to support providers, and they give a lot of technical assistance. We have resources for them. They're able to call our office at any time. We have a lot of walk-ins that come in. We do schedule, but we have more walk-ins than anything.
Wow.
So they're
What's
able
your
to come in and
staffing
ask the
like?
question.
Because
I have
that's to have people walk in.
Yeah,
and
we have, I have 6 licensors, actually
That's
now
it?
5.
Sorry, I don't
but
work in the
hopefully
same
one
house,
will
but
be
if I can
posted
keep going,
soon.
give you guys more money.
Yeah, we do have a high caseload, and
Wow.
yeah, we do have a high
But you
caseload.
can just walk in and be seen. That's very helpful to know.
We prefer that you schedule, but we wouldn't turn you away if you came in and asked them questions. That's fine. The tools that we use,
That's very helpful.
we have 3 tools. We have a monitoring tool, an enhanced tool, and a full visit tool. How we gauge quality in licensing, well, you're looking at the history of the program, and you're seeing what their challenges are. If they've had high-risk situations in their program, they're going to need more technical assistance. They're going to need more supports. So we're going to do that full study to help you get to an enhanced visit, meaning a shorter visit. Every 6 years, you're going to have the full visit anyway. So throughout that first year to the 6th year, you may have a shorter visit Depending on how well you're doing in your program, the licensor assesses through going to the program and as well as looking in the files.
So it's really complementing.
It does, for the
what you
first
were-
level.
Right, exactly. Okay, that's very helpful. So if you operate at the first level, but then as providers get to level 2, 3, and 4, you're still providing technical assistance, and
Yes.
so it's really working hand in hand
Yes.
with each other. That's very helpful.
And-
Yep, go ahead.
The other thing I want to talk about is the role of family child care systems. So we see this as kind of an alignment of monitoring systems, so that we're really working with QRIS, we're working with licensing, we're working with community-based supports as well. And what we know in our region is nearly half of our family child care educators are affiliated with a family child care system. And a family child care system helps with enrollment, helps with technical assistance, helps with monitoring. So they're in the program monitoring at least once per month. So we're going to be working with home visitors to do more coordination of training so that they're more familiar with our regulatory requirements and our quality requirements. So we're doing that. There's also the food program. So the food program is another great resource that is coming in to provide training and technical assistance for educators, and also reimbursement for nutritious snacks and meals.
Is that new,
Mm-mm.
or has that
No.
existed for some time, the food program?
No, we've always been affiliated.
Always been, okay,
Mhm.
wow. This is very helpful. I don't want to leave Loretta out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Loretta, feel free to jump in on any
Sure.
piece of this, particularly, it's been
Sure.
very helpful.
So under the Coordinated Family Community Engagement Grant, which is often referred to as CFCE, the primary role of the CFCE is to strengthen the capacity of the family as the child's first teacher, which is a wonderful opportunity. So under this grant, it's looking at how do you reach out to families that are have high needs and often have multiple high risk factors that are often hard to reach. Where are those families? So under the grant, there's 90 grantees across the state. Every city and town in Massachusetts is served under a CFCE. Under the grant, the investment from EEC is a little over, it's $13.4 million. Grantees can range between, there's some small communities that are $47,500, that's our smallest grant, and Boston is our largest grant across the state, which is a little over $800,000. The foundation of the work that we do is built off of the Strengthening Families Protective Factors, where we build parent resiliency. We help families build social connections. We provide support, concrete support in time of need, and knowledge of parent and child development, and social and emotional support as well. So that is the foundation of the work that we do. So the goal of the grant is to look at families that aren't connected in the mixed delivery. So right now, just within the last year, we're able to now support families that are on the EEC wait list. So as families access the wait list, their information is shared with the Coordinated Family Community Engagement grantees, and they're sending out literature, their newsletters, their family programming, their play groups, their parent education. Families are receiving that on a monthly basis. So as they get connected, that's a wonderful resource to be able to connect those families. So Boston is a very unique grant for us. Boston is so large that under this grant cycle, we actually just were in an open competitive bid, and Boston Family Nurturing Center is the grantee for Boston. So Aditi Samaramian is now the coordinator and contact person for Boston. Boston is so large that they actually have designed the city to be in 9 house 9 neighborhood lead agent hubs. And these hubs are embedded in each community, and families know these stakeholders in the community. They're familiar, there's trusting relationships. Under those nine hubs, I'm sorry, they're housed under the Boston Network, so they work as a coalition, and there's an advisory council that meets monthly, and their monthly meeting is on Thursdays of every month. Under the programming under Boston, they provide literacy play groups that provide monitoring, mentoring for families, family cafes and parent education that meets the needs of families, information and referral. They conduct welcome baby visits as families are having new babies in their communities. They go out and they provide a basket that they've worked with community stakeholders to build and provide important information and make that warm connection with families.
Who are the 9 hubs?
The 9 hubs, so it's all across Boston. So in your area, it's the Boys and Girls Club is the subcontractor. In Jamaica Plain, it's Nurtury. In Rosendale, it's the South Side Head Start. And you actually said Mattapan, and it's Mattapan Head Start. So certainly I can provide you with a list of the 9 contact information. But their role is to really support the community. And one of the things that we're doing right now is a community needs assessment, where they're looking at their community and really looking at intensively with their partners and stakeholders, what are the needs are in the community, what's being supported already, because we do not want to duplicate services. We want to make linkages to those services, but what are the needs in each community? In Boston, the needs of East Boston is different from the needs of Allston Brighton. So that's very unique. Under the grant, there's the playgroups. Facilitators provide an opportunity for families to have an ages and stages screening tool, where it looks at a child's development and the parent is engaged in that process, and it's built off of a trusted relationship with the family. So generally, the playgroups would initiate an ages and stages screening tool after a minimum of 3 interactions with that family. And families participate in that. They actually help conduct the ages and stages, and together they score it, and they look at the strengths of the child, the areas that the child might be developing, and if the child is in an area that they need more support, they help the family get connected with either early intervention, the public schools, their pediatricians. So I do have, and one of the other hallmarks of Boston is really trying to meet those hard-to-reach families. Boston has done a fabulous job in their parent ambassadors, where under these 9 hubs, they actually have worked with families in the community, and they're part of their staff, and they work as an ambassador family. So if they're at the laundromats, if they're in their community, if they're at the supermarket, they're getting connected and they're sharing the information, the parent education opportunities, the play groups, getting to know the needs of the community and sharing that back with their neighborhood lead agent. Some of the things that have happened in the Dorchester area, there's been a new collaboration with the Outdoor RX, where they've provided 2 opportunities, and over 60 families attended the 2 opportunities, where they're building gross motor development with families, and both parents and children participate in that. There is 3 parent leaders, 3 parent ambassadors that are working in Dorchester and providing insight, and they actually meet across the city and conduct networking and meetup meetings. In Dorchester alone, there was 18 ASQs, ages and stages screenings conducted, and out of those, 3 were referred for additional support. So they were either encouraged to go to early intervention, the public school, or with their pediatrician. And there's been lots of opportunities for families that might not have had experiences within the community, and then that is embedded in the play groups. So if they've gone to the Children's Museum, or if they've gone to, one activity was a petting zoo and engaging families, and then that curriculum is followed through in the play groups.
This is very helpful. 'Cause some of this I didn't know anything about.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine that others may not as well, so thank you. I want to be mindful of time, so I guess one last sort of piece we can talk about, I mean, this has been helpful in talking about quality and talking about access, metrics, licensing, pulling out the strengths out of providers, and this has just been very helpful, and we will continue to follow up as we process all of the helpful information you've given us, both on paper and in testimony. But I guess the last piece is just some of that affordability piece in terms of subsidies, who provides them, who needs them, should the focus really be these families 4 and under? Talk to me about subsidies or lack thereof. Thank you, Carmel.
Well, the subsidies are administered in different ways. We contract with particular programs who have entered into our income eligible bid, typically, and they have received contracted slots from us. And that we are entering into a new bid cycle, which will begin in the new year at some point, and that would be awarded and started up in for the new fiscal year 19. But they are awarded a number of contracted slots, which are a steady amount of slots, which are awarded to the program, and children are then enrolled through those. So the program would reach out to children families, if you will, on the wait list for children who are waiting, and they would fill the slots in that regard. Or families have access through vouchers, and they would receive information, a letter of referral through the Childcare Resource and Referral Agency, as we refer to it, and that's Childcare Choices of Boston through ABCD, to say that there are vouchers open. At this point in time, there have been a release of, I think that most recently, there's just issued 163 vouchers to Childcare Choices of Boston. Of course, that doesn't meet the need by any stretch, but those are our 2 subsidy areas that we cover. Massachusetts, or I should say the department, right now subsidizes approximately 54,400 or thereabout children per month across the Commonwealth in all kinds of care situations, whether it be family child care, group and school age child care programs, or Andrea, you had raised sort of the non-traditional hours, as we call them. And so those are situations whereby we may have a family who needs childcare in situations where the parent works a schedule which is not accommodating to a regular childcare situation. So they will ask either a relative or what's known as informal non-relative provider, as we call them. So it's sort of kith and kin. You might have heard that expression before if you've been doing these hearings, in which that individual comes into the parent's home and provides care to the children, and it's usually for an evening shift. And we would be providing reimbursement for those services. They receive a subsidy for that. But to the point of the subsidy is that there is an eligibility requirement of the parent has to be working or in education or training, or there could be special need of parent, that is acceptable as well. There is a screening process that they go through with the CCR&R, as we call them, the Child Care Resource and Referral Agency, or it could be through the program. They have to go sort of meet those, go through the application process, just complete it as to what is needed, the ages of the children, et cetera, and then they are enrolled. And it usually is, at this point in time, because of our new federal requirements, it's up to 12 months. So, speaking of what the subsidy rates are, just so that you have an idea, here in what's known as Region 6, which is the Boston area, is just for center-based programs. For infants, the daily reimbursement rate is $72.41. For toddlers, it's $67.50. And for preschoolers, it's $42.57. For a full day school age, if it's $37.86, and if it's after school only, it's $20.30. If we're talking about family child care, we have different rates. Kelly had referred to if you're affiliated with a system, it's a little bit different. If you have children who are under 2, it's $60.34, and if they're 2 or over, it's $46.27. However, if you are just working for yourself, if you will, just a small business, independent as we call them, it's if you're under 2, it's $47.70, and if you are a provider and have children who are 2 and over, it's $33.74. So there is a bit of a difference. So,
Of there are nearly 54,000 families across the Commonwealth. How many in Boston?
how many in Boston? I don't think I have those numbers right in front of me, but I do. I don't want to hazard a guess. I think, I'm not sure if I had that before I left, so I apologize. We can get you that information.
Okay.
So,
And so just an example, so the infant that's, $72 a day, I have no idea what the going rate is for different types of facilities for an infant.
exactly.
So is it a wide range? So does someone charge someone $100 a day or $200 or $80? So I'm just curious as to a family that gets this subsidy and eligible for it, how much does that actually cover of their actual cost?
Do you want this? Should I share this info? So this is by, this is an assessment done by the
Is that in here?
Administration for Children and Families. I'm not sure if it's in there, but I can
Okay.
get it for you.
Okay, thank you.
That shows that the average cost of infant care in Massachusetts in center-based programs is $17,082. In family programs, it's $10,679. And
And
that
the-
would be what's
ahead.
called the market rate.
Okay.
Right, and that's across Massachusetts.
And I was going to say,
So,
isn't
could
it
be
like
higher in-
$20,000? I remember rounding up, because we had another hearing about this that I believe Councilor Wu sort of kicked off the funding and how we could do more to advocate at the state for increasing the subsidy or some, things like that. So this is very helpful.
Carmel, do you want to talk about the recent increase in the subsidy rate to help move us sort of closer to market rate?
Well, we've had the increase in that, and we're still looking to increase our rates all the time.
Yeah.
Our commissioner is always advocating towards that. We are required under our federal mandate, if you will, and we are funded by the Child Care Development Block Grant. That's a big part of our funding. We receive state funding as well as federal funding to come into compliance as to sort of balancing towards the market rate. And being in Massachusetts and being in one of the most expensive states, particularly for childcare, we are one of, if not the highest in the country. It is to sort of see how can we balance that and come into sort of the 50th percentile and more towards the 75th percentile. And so that's what we're doing. We are moving very much in that direction, and we've had steady increases over the years. So it's just a matter of how can we continue to make that progress, and which obviously helps to improve educator salaries, et cetera. The question then, though, is what does that do when we're moving the subsidy rates up, but what does it do to providers who are trying to stay in competition with, you know, a subsidized provider,
Right.
et cetera, and how do they sort of balance when they're trying to look for, you know, it's sort of the small business problem, if you will,
Right.
when they're trying to look for clients, families, et cetera.
And I was going to ask, I remember that sort of, how can you not remember this, the Massachusetts being one of the highest in terms of what it costs to find a provider compared to other states. Why is that? I don't know that we ever sort of pulled that apart. Is there reasons why that might be the case, or are there studies that talk about this, that pull that apart a little bit?
Sure, I think that our regulatory compliance is in the top 5 in the country in terms of our standards and our ratios. We have very good ratios that are built on best practice and the developmental needs of children. So you need you need one teacher for 3 infants in a classroom. You can have one teacher for 10 preschool children in a classroom. So those ratios really drive the rates. And of course, salaries drive that, you know, in accordance.
And then, of course, there's always a question of whether or not we're paying providers adequate salaries given
We're not.
the work.
Right.
Good. Say it again, right? Because that was also a topic of discussion in our first, is, you know, the high turnover, and why is that? Well, they're making no money. You know, the tough jobs often you just don't pay them enough. So
Exactly.
thank you for saying that so bluntly. I appreciate that, Kelly. Does anyone have anything else they want to add? I do want to sort of, there are a couple of folks obviously in the audience, so I want, if anyone has questions of the panelists, and again, we might have folks who watch this online, and we'll sort of put it out there, who may follow up with questions, but if anyone's here has a question or something they'd like someone to expand upon.
I think the only thing I'd like to add
Yeah.
is that the department is always willing to share information with parents
You are,
and, you know, with really the general public if there's questions about childcare, if there's questions about rates, if there's questions sort of just in general about early education and care. And so I really encourage people to call our regional office. We have lots of resources. We have a lot of information available. So I really ask that, you know, just please go to our website, which is, you know, www.mass.gov.eec. I was going to say, and please just, it's very user-friendly, and it's really geared towards giving information, but all of our offices are located on there. I was going to say Kelly is the regional director. I was going to say Linda is our group and school age supervisor, and they're wonderful people. Tricia Halpin could not be with us this evening. She is our family childcare supervisor, and they are wonderful resources to help with getting you the information that you need. So,
This was very helpful, and I guess we'll end with this, unless I didn't see any sort of hands from the audience. Oh.
One of the things I wanted to mention is that we found that 10% of preschoolers are actually at home.
10% of preschoolers are actually at home.
Employer in Boston are at home.
You want to come up and use a mic? Join us.
Are you going to see me staring at my notes?
No, I have lots of notes.
So again, I manage the preschool expansion grant for Boston Public Schools and moving into the universal pre-K role. And as I indicated, 10% of our 4-year-olds are currently at home. In terms of access, we found that the two areas that lacked the most access were actually Hyde Park and Dorchester, and even in those areas, they were over 90%. The universal pre-K goal is to really focus on quality, and obviously part of that quality includes well-compensated teachers as well as bachelor degree evidence-based curriculum, so really looking at programs that include a curriculum that's evidence-based, and Boston Public Schools obviously is encouraging programs to use our revisions, which is our focus on K-1.
When you said the 90, so Hyde Park, Dorchester, you see there's a tremendous need there.
Well, there's a lack of access there, but it's still over 90% access. So when we think about potentially focusing on access compared to quality, it would be in Hyde Park and some small areas in Dorchester.
And is that for sort of under the age of 4?
So we're only,
Or,
no, only 4-year-olds.
Only
We're
4-year-olds,
only focused on
exactly.
4-year-olds.
Okay.
Yes, so they certainly could speak much
Right.
more to
no, that's
infants
great
and toddlers.
to think about where else we sort of have to hyper-focus.
Yes, and some of the other key focuses when we talk about quality are certainly family engagement, really making sure that we're engaging families very early on. And we find that with the mixed delivery system, our community-based organizations are actually touching families very early, and so connecting with the community-based programs through our mixed delivery system is going to be critical. The next thing is coaching and professional development, so making sure that once teachers receive those degrees, they receive ongoing professional development as well as coaching. And then finally, the ratio is critical, and some sort of assessment and evaluation tool is also critical. And finally, I just want to highlight that the preschool expansion grant currently serves 250 children, and one of the keys for that grant was to really make sure that it serves low-income families, that the children are 4-year-old and also Boston residents. And we're looking at a way to really connect them to our K-2 classrooms through a connector that we're piloting this year. So ensuring that families stay in our community base and get that full family engagement and full day support, and then able to transition into our K-2 classrooms.
No, that's very helpful. And I think, first of all, that's very helpful. You don't have to leave.
Okay.
And it's just an example of where the state is obviously playing a major role, but the city does as well through partnerships, through grants, through being a subcontractor, various things that often we don't necessarily know about. Even as counselors, we're sort of sometimes up here, not necessarily seeing everything that's happening on the ground. So it's helpful to hear that in terms of where we could play a role in terms of resources, research, human capital, where we can advocate for obviously 4-year-olds, but also the children that fall below that. But I'd be quick to just even quick highlights or summaries, and we're going to take all of this and process this and think about this and share this, but where you see the city of Boston can do more to meet the needs of families that you work with every single day. Are there places where you, not just Boston, but municipalities across the Commonwealth, where you say there's a gap here, this municipality could do this, or this municipality could do this? I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts, if any.
It's a big question.
Yeah, I know.
I really do encourage Boston to take a close look at the need for greater numbers and high quality of infant-toddler care. I think one of the challenges, and I'm a huge supporter and fan of universal pre-K and PEG classrooms, but one of the unintended downstream consequences of public schools providing such a great level of care is a lot of community-based providers are then forced to kind of retool their own programming and wind up having to provide care to a more expensive infant-toddler population. Another unintended consequence is that the salaries for educators involved in the public school system are more on par with public school teachers, and there is a gap that's contributing to the workforce challenges that programs find in being able to hire and compensate high-quality teachers. And often what happens is that as soon as a program supports an educator to earn their bachelor's degree as soon as a public school opening comes up, they lose those educators to the public schools. So it's making sure that there's an adequate recognition of the needs of community-based providers as well, and that includes family childcare providers.
No, that's very helpful.
Anything, Linda, that you think?
No, I was just thinking about the 4-year-olds that go to the public schools, and then after their school day, the parents have an assumption that they can go into the after school, but they're not old enough because they don't go into first grade the following year. So
After-school
that's just,
programming for, oh, that's
I
very
see that.
interesting. That's good to know, 4-year-olds.
I mean, just to that point, I think one of the keys for universal pre-K is to really think about the additional time that families need beyond the 180 days and the 6.5 hours, and how do we provide that surround care that includes quality curriculum, so it doesn't become sort of an after-school or a bus ride, but certainly an opportunity to extend on what's currently happening in the classroom as it relates to the curriculum. And as well as the infant and toddlers, I would also add to focus more on professional development for infants and toddlers as well. I feel like a lot of the professional development tends to be geared towards our preschool, and infant toddler families need it just as much. And finally, I would add comprehensive services. One of the things that I've learned through the Preschool Expansion Grant and the families that we serve is that oftentimes families' first exposure to things like dental services or nutrition or behavior services are often provided in our community-based programs, and really making sure that as we think about both access and quality, that we're thinking about comprehensive services.
Anything else you guys want to add? You ladies want to add? I'll say this, this was extremely helpful. And like I said in the beginning, it was really testing some assumptions based on, frankly, I think a lack of information or misinformation. And having come from the state side and worked with EEC in the past, I still didn't understand quite how it's all connected, all of the work you guys do, particularly the quality and metrics and how it relates to the new licensing requirements, the technology, phase 2. So this is very helpful. It was great to have you here to talk about, it's one thing to get the money from EEC. Once we have it, what are we doing with it? But more importantly, where are the gaps? And not only where are the gaps, but where else could the city be partnering or filling in to make even this partnership more effective? So the next steps really are to continue to have these conversations. The face of the council, as everyone knows, is going to change. We have 3 new councilors coming who I think would care deeply about this issue as well, and who I think we could also bring into the conversation. But the goal of Councilor Presley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Sabi George, and myself is to take all of these briefings, all of these hearings, all of the incredible information we've learned from not only you, but from different providers, from families, the stories we've heard, couch it in a report in some way, but put it in the terms of what is the problem, where are the gaps, what role does the state play just because it's the state and they oversee certain things that we don't as a city, but what role can the city play, both the mayor, BPS, the council, and to really have some concrete recommendations that come out of all of this information for us to do at the city level and possibly in partnership with state electeds and as well as yourself. So thank you so much for coming to Dorchester. I don't know where you guys all live. Thank you for the work that you do every day. And I do want to quickly highlight Eric from Councilor Presley's office, who is here. Thank you, because he's also going to be working on this report with all of us. Once again, thank you to Central staff. Thank you for community for being here. This information, we have a lot of information. You can follow up with my office. I'm Councilor Campbell. For anything that was produced today, we will have that to give out to the public. But ladies, thank you so much. This is the beginning, I hope, of many conversations. And again, thank you to Central staff. It's not easy to do hearings in the community. You have to move a lot of equipment, and there's a lot of rules to follow, so thank you. And a special shout out to Carrie. Thank you very much, Carrie. And thank you, ladies, and have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you for having us.
This hearing's adjourned.